It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the movies of January 12th, 1996. Yes, we are actually looking at films from 1996. So we've got 6 movies to look at. So let's get right to it, and we'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend. I put that again in quotation marks because it wasn't really a big hit, but it's had a cult following over the years since its release, and that film is called Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood.
Max Films presents.
What up, homie?
Sean Wayans. You line me up in the back? And Marlon Wayans.
We got a problem?
From the creators of In Living Color.
I said, we have a problem. Let's go!
Don't be a menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood.
Give me your best shot. Oh, come on, Grandma.
Rated R. Starting Friday, January 12th.
Now, for some reason, I've always thought that this was under a different title. I always thought that this was called Don't Be a Menace to Society While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood, South Central. Like, I'm pretty sure I remember watching previews for this that actually had that as the title, but that came from a week before the movie came out, and apparently that was how it was. I don't know where that other name came from then. I don't know. I've looked on here to see if it's actually on here with that old title, and I have not been able to find it anywhere. I think the closest I've seen is it's been simply called Don't Be a Menace, and other than that, I can't find anywhere with that title that I've been thinking of. So, Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood is what it's called, and this is the first spoof movie that the Wayans brothers had done since I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker, which is a classic movie, a very funny movie overall, a very underrated spoof movie, honestly. And here you got kind of what's essentially a sequel, because it's spoofing 1990s hood movies like Menace to Society, the aforementioned South Central, Boys in the Hood, a bunch of other movies of that type, and it certainly doesn't have that same spark that I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker has. Like, that's a movie that after over 30 years later, that movie still is so hilarious to me. Like, it's still a movie that still holds up. This one, not so much. It was coming after the success of In Living Color. You got Shawn Wayans and Marlon Wayans in their feature film debut, and it's not a bad movie per se, and it's certainly a lot better than some of the later movies these guys would do that weren't as strong as some of their early works, but there are moments in here that are occasionally funny here and there, but for the most part, it's a mostly forgettable movie, and I think it's mostly forgettable, to me at least, because it just doesn't have that same creative spark that you would get from the older Zucker brothers movies who did this kind of genre so well. And also, since then, I've seen a much better spoof movie of this type, the aforementioned Fear of a Black Hat from Musty Cundiff, which is actually a very funny and clever movie that not a lot of people really talk about. This one gets more attention than that movie does, mostly because of the Wayans brothers and the fact of everything they were covering back then. Even something like CB4, which is very similar to Fear of a Black Hat, I thought was much funnier than this. This, I just thought, it was just a movie that was just kind of like, I don't like it, but I don't hate it at the same time either. I feel like there's so much more that could have been done with this. It kind of goes for a little bit too much the safer jokes at this point. But they don't really do anything clever or exciting with them. There's not really a whole lot of great funny moments in here. There are just kind of little chuckles here and there, and I just didn't find a whole lot there that was really all that funny. It's not a bad movie per se, but it's a movie that definitely could have been a whole lot better given the circumstances that they had to work with. So that's Don't Be a Menace to Society While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood. Let's move on to the next movie, and that is Sally Field, Ed Harris, and Kiefer Sutherland in Eye for an Eye.
I look like a fairy princess, Mama.
Oh, yes, you do. You look just like a fairy princess.
An average family.
You look great.
Thank you.
A special day.
Hello? Listen, I hate to tell you this, I'm going to be late. I'm stuck in some horrific traffic jam.
Could you pick up the balloons?
Got the balloons.
Hang on a sec, someone's at the door.
Julie?
Can I help you?
Julie? What's happening? Julie!
Can you phone the police for me, please? Please!
A random crime.
I won't hang up the phone. I'll stay on with you. Help me!
We're holding him for 48 hours. Then I'm gonna have to let him go.
Why?
I've got 0, that's why.
Sorry.
The man who murdered my daughter is free.
What's the point of watching that?
Do you believe in the death penalty?
When justice fails.
I followed Robert Doom yesterday. I found out where he lives. He never even knew I was there.
Where will you turn? Justice.
I need you to help me.
Desperately wanting someone dead and actually killing them. It's two different things.
Do you think you're capable of going through with it?
Robert Dube is a free man.
Yes, he's a free man and he's gonna do it again. You're completely useless.
Paramount Pictures presents Sally Field,
I can't let him go.
Kiefer Sutherland,
Hey, you're pretty.
Ed Harris,
What the hell are you doing, Karen?
I can't rest. I'll never ever rest again until he pays for what he did to her.
I don't even remember what she looked like.
in a John Schlesinger film.
Spend the rest of your life in prison.
You can't catch him. You can't punish him. You can't protect anyone else.
Stay out of my neighborhood. I'll stay out of yours. What are you gonna do? Shoot me?
God, I hate this movie so much. I mean, let's get the elephant in the room out of the way here, because man, Kiefer Sutherland is horrible in this movie. He is not playing a good, convincing villain in this movie at all. Like, he does not give a crap, and not like in the way that you hate him so much, you hate him so much, but in a way you kind of like him. You just hate him because he just seems like a stupid hick in this movie. Like, there is no sense of remorse for this guy whatsoever. There's no sense that I should like this person in any way, shape, or form. I don't like anybody in this movie, honestly. Not Sally Field, not Ed Harris. It's just, all the characters in this movie just seem so hateful. Like, you hate every single one of them because every single one of these people acts so stupid and acts so ridiculous and acts so not like a normal person. Like, it doesn't feel, nothing about these characters in here make any sense whatsoever. And it's also an exploitive movie where basically they kind of like pretty much what the consensus for this on Rotten Tomatoes says. It crudely exploits every parent's nightmare with deeply offensive results, and really, it really does that. It just doesn't really work. It's like exploitive crap. Like, it's not really all that exciting. If you were trying to get Sally Field to be the next Charles Bronson, like a Death Wish, you fail miserably on that front, man. I mean, this whole movie overall just has so many great people involved that you really can't understand, you really can't get a good sense of what these people were thinking when they made this movie. I mean, Sally Field, Kiefer Sutherland, Ed Harris, Joe Mantegna, Beverly D'Angelo, Philip Baker Hall, Keith David, Donald Logue. Just so many good people in this movie, but there's just nothing there. And it's written by the guys who wrote Amanda Silver and Rick Jaffa, who wrote War for the Planet of the Apes, which is a far superior movie. They wrote they wrote all the Planet of the Apes movies. They've written so many better movies than this garbage right here. This movie is straight up garbage. This is something that you would see as a Lifetime movie of the week, but Paramount decided to just put it in theaters because, hey, we got Sally Field and Ed Harris and Kiefer Sutherland. They're big names, and they're going to sell this movie. And no, that wasn't, because you dumped this out in the middle of January, and you didn't even try to hide the fact that it was a bad movie. It's a bad movie. It is way too exploitive. It's not an interesting movie whatsoever. The characters are all terrible. You hate every single person in this movie. It's one of the worst movies of the year. It's really one of the worst thrillers ever made. I mean, it's that bad of a movie, and it's just a mess on so many levels. So that's Eye for an Eye for you, and the worst of the worst is yet to come. Ladies and gentlemen, our next movie, Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin in Biodome.
Are trapped in the biodome.
Please let me out, Mommy.
Just because we're stuck in a bubble doesn't mean we can't cause any trouble.
On January 12th,
What do you boys want?
To die and come back as a leotard?
Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin are putting the mental back in environmental.
They're the rarest Lepidoptera in the world.
Biodome, rated PG-13. Starts Friday, January 12th.
What more do I even need to say about this movie? I mean, it's got Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin as the leads, and they're playing these characters who are kind of supposed to be like the Beavis and Butthead of their is in real life, but Beavis and Butthead are actually much cleverer and much funnier than these two idiots are in this movie. I mean, another movie where everybody is a straight-up idiot. Nobody really acts like a normal person. Everybody just kind of accepts these two guys as just the dumbasses that they are, and we're just supposed to accept it because it's supposed to be funny comedy, and it's not at all. It's a horrible movie. It's another horrible movie where you're trying to combine environmentalism with toilet humor, sexual innuendo, drug use, and not even funny drug use, sexual innuendo, or toilet humor of any type whatsoever. I mean, this is just a bad movie, man. It's just like, let me put it this way. Remember the episode where Johnny Bravo gets stuck in the dome and he drives everybody crazy in there? And you know which episode I'm talking about. This episode right here.
Just watch TV till they come to take me out of here.
Johnny, that's not a TV, that's the microwave.
Quiet! I'm watching my favorite show. Macaroni and cheese spinning around and around and around and around and around. And Eddie.
That episode of Johnny Bravo is called Biosphere Johnny, by the way, and it is so much better and much more funnier than this feature-length movie is. This 7-minute short does more with this setup than this piece of shit does. I mean, when you have to throw in cameos by Roger Clinton, Patty Hearst, and Tenacious D in one of their early film roles, and this is all you have to give them, like, what more do I even need to say about this movie? This is a terrible, terrible movie. This is a horrible, horrible movie on so many levels. The jokes are not funny. Everybody in this movie is a complete idiot. This is another reason why we have why the January dumping ground exists, because of movies like this. And yeah, so that's another bad one. Biodome. Can we turn it around with the next movie? Sandra Bullock and Dennis Leary in 2 by C. Let's see.
To change.
You're either a contractor or you are a thief. How many thieves you know got day jobs?
He doesn't get it.
I'm open.
Open to what?
New experiences, things like that.
She's almost had it.
I would like to have a house.
Is this one of those hormone things? But they're willing to give it a try. That's the greatness laid on. Sandra Bullock.
To learn how to fish.
Dennis Leary. First thing, it's like a little... 2 by C.
Just kidding.
Rated R. Starts Friday, January 12th at a theater near you.
I mean, it's a lot better than what we've looked at so far. I mean, that's not saying a whole lot. This is not really a great film, but I will say that of all the stuff we've looked at, this is the one that I can kind of say is actually kind of decent. And I think it's kind of decent because of the people that are involved here. You got Sandra Bullock in here, who usually can be very good even in some bad movies. He's okay in here. But Dennis Leary, man, like, I think this is a movie that shows what Dennis Leary can do with his range as an actor, because we don't usually see him in these type of movies. We usually see him as the typical asshole character that we usually see him in stuff like The Ref and other movies and TV shows like that, like The Job and all that. But here, I think he does play a romantic lead in this movie pretty well. Like, I think he does have some good chemistry with Sandra Bullock overall, and I think that's what carries the movie over a little bit to recommend it, at least. The script could have been a whole lot better. Like, I think the writing overall isn't as strong as it could have been, even though Dennis Leary says it's one of the funniest scripts he's ever read, but he also co-wrote the script, so he kind of has to say that. But he blames the director for kind of destroying it. But this director, Bill Bennett, I have no idea who he really is. I haven't really seen a whole lot of his work, so I can't really say anything from his past work, but I mean, this isn't the worst thing I've seen. As a one-time watch, I guess it's okay. Sandra Bullock and Dennis Leary are good enough to keep it going for at least a little bit. But other than that, though, I don't think it's one you'd want to watch over and over again. Maybe for just a one-time watch, it's perfectly fine, but it's nothing special, really. It's still the best thing we've looked at so far this week. So that's 2 by C. Let's move on to the next movie, and that is the monkey comedy Dunston Checks In.
Most debonair hero can be found where the action is. His name is Dunston. He's conducting covert operations, romancing irresistible women.
Oh, that's just how I like it.
And facing unimaginable danger. Dunston checks in.
Yes.
Oh, more. I like it rough.
Oh.
So here you have another one of those movies that is pretty bad on paper. It's not a great film overall, but it's another one of those movies that I used to watch a lot when I was a kid. I mean, the first time I ever saw anything about this movie was on that Power Rangers movie videotape when they showed the trailer. I guess it was supposed to come out around Christmas time, and well, technically it does come out around Christmas time, maybe a couple of weeks after it, but still. But yeah, it's not a good movie. It is not a great film overall, but I'll be damned, man, if it doesn't take me back, man. I mean, as a kid, I did kind of enjoy this movie. It is a very stupid movie. It's a very silly movie. It's a very ridiculous movie. It is not a clever movie. It's got some really good talent overall in it, but it's stupid comedy, but it's pretty funny stupid comedy. Like, this is a fun, slapstick, nostalgic comedy for me. It's not really a clever movie by any means necessary, but it's pretty fun for what it is. It's a fun movie for kids. I think little kids can enjoy it too. And some adults can enjoy it as well too. Like, it's ridiculously stupid. It's not really clever on any level whatsoever, but it's a film that still makes me laugh even after all these years. Like, I know it's not a great movie by any means, but it's not half bad. I mean, it's a funny, cheesy, guilty pleasure type of a film. Plus, you watch the movie and you get a sense that was kind of the goal of the filmmakers of this movie. They saw the old school Disney movies that were very much like this, where they have the monkeys as the centerpiece of the movie, like Monkeys Go Home, old Dean Jones movie, those type of things. I feel like that was the main goal with this movie, is to try to make something on that type of a level, and in a way, I could definitely kind of see that with this film. I could definitely see where they were coming from. I don't think it works all the way through, but there were moments in there where I got some legitimately fun, silly laughs out of it. I mean, it's a good cast overall, too. Jason Alexander, Eric Lloyd from the Santa Claus, Faye Dunaway, Rupert Everett, Paul Reubens, Glenn Shaddix, Frank Welker, and Bob Bergen, prolific voice actors in this. It is a funny movie. It's not a great movie, but it's still a really funny movie. I really found a lot of it that did kind of work for me, even after all these years later. It is not a great movie in terms of, like, quality-wise, but as a fun, silly, stupid comedy for kids, it still holds up after all these years. Even as I've watched it all these years later as an adult, I still found a lot in there that still makes me laugh about it. It's not a great movie by any means necessary, but it's a silly, fun movie. You know what I compare it to? I compare it to Baby's Day Out. Baby's Day Out has kind of a lot of similar things to this movie. It's not the best written film. It's mostly made for kids, but as a kid that watched this movie back then, I found a lot to enjoy about it, and as I do with this movie as well. Not a great movie overall, but as a kid, I used to watch this one a lot, and as an adult, I still found a lot to really appreciate from it. That's just my personal opinion on it, and if anything, it's probably the best thing that came out on this entire weekend, but then again, it's not really saying a whole lot by any means necessary, but I had fun with it. Dunston checks in, so. With that said, let us move on to the last movie that we have here, and that is Lawnmower Man 2, Beyond Cyberspace.
Shocked you as the Lawnmower Man. I am God. Now he's back. I have a million calls to make. And more terrifying than ever. He can destroy our world. He figures we'll have to turn to him as the new messiah in cyberspace.
In 3 days, I'll be in every system in the world.
You've got to stop Joe before it's too late.
This universe is mine. Lawnmower Man 2, Beyond Cyberspace. Rated PG-13. Starts Friday.
Okay, let's just run down everything that is wrong with that little clip we saw right there alone. Number one, this story makes no sense whatsoever. If you saw the original Lawnmower Man, you know that Job sucked himself into the computer and doesn't even have a body anymore, so where the hell does his body come from now? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. They retconned the ending of this movie to make it seem like he took his body out into the world and put it into another body, I guess, because that brings us to the second problem. Why is he being played by Max Headroom? Like Matt Frewer is a good actor. He's a good comedic actor. He is not a good villain in this movie. I mean, I don't know what the hell they were thinking when they said, let's get him to play Job in this, because he acts nothing like Jeff Fahey in the first movie. He looks nothing like Jeff Fahey in the first movie. His whole attitude in this movie is just so out of nowhere, like a third-rate Jim Carrey, which, I mean, you got Matt Frewer who's played Jim Carrey characters in the past, Dumb and Dumber, the animated series. He was Lloyd in that series. But here, it's just like, what were they thinking? What do we have? 3 things now. Fourth overall, PG-13 movie. for an R-rated, for a film that was originally rated R, almost always fails on every level, and this one was no exception. Number 5, just a story that makes no sense whatsoever. Like, nothing about this makes any sense at all. 6, stupid comedy, like stupid elements in here that make no sense whatsoever. There's a dog in this movie that somehow manages to put a CD into a thing with it, and somehow it works without the CD getting scratched or anything. 7, the visual, I don't even know if I said 7 or 6 or not, but it's just kind of with the continuity of this movie. This movie makes no sense whatsoever. The visuals in this movie are awful on so many levels. Like, this is bad even for 1996. 1996 had better visual effects in its movies compared to what this piece of shit has in here. And last but not least, this is not this shouldn't even be related to Lawnmower Man at all. This is probably a movie where it was based off of a rejected script. Maybe it was something called Beyond Cyberspace or Job's War or something like that, and they changed it around to bring in some elements from the Lawnmower Man to kind of thinly convince us that it's a sequel to the original film, and it's nothing like the original film whatsoever. I don't care what you say. This movie has nothing to do with the original film whatsoever. It gets so lazy. They take clips from other movies. They took a clip from Die Hard 2 in this movie to make you think like that's something that's actually happening in the movie. They took the airplane crash, the second airplane crash from Die Hard 2, and put it in this movie. That's how lazy this movie is. It's a mess on so many levels. It's a terrible movie on so many levels. It's just like, why did you even bother to make this movie? To make a quick cash grab on this, to turn it into a new franchise? And what more do I need to say about it? Lawnmower Man 2 is terrible. It's a terrible movie. It's so bad that when you find this movie, it's usually packaged with the first Lawnmower Man movie. They don't even bother to put this in its own singular DVD or Blu-ray. You have to usually get it with the original movie. And even then, people don't usually watch it because it's Lawnmower Man 2. It's like, it's a bad movie. It's a horrible movie on so many levels. I'm slouching right now just talking about it. Seriously, I don't know how I noticed that, but that just happened. But yeah, Lawnmower Man 2 sucks, plain and simple. And that's the end of a fun week of movies to look at. Most of the movies were very bad films. Most of those films are films that pretty much sum up why January is considered a dumping ground for movies, but at least next week we get a little bit better. We'll have 2 movies to look at, including From Dusk to Dawn, starring Quentin Tarantino and George Clooney and Salma Hayek, so we'll at least have that. We'll also have Richard Dreyfuss in Mr. Holland's Opus. Why did I say it like that? Mr. Holland's Opus. So at least we're going to have 2 better movies than what we have this week for sure, but that'll be on the next episode. This was a fun one this week. Even with the lack of good movies that we had to look at, I had some fun with this one. So, with that said, thank you very much for watching. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. And until then, as always, take care.